Hey there and welcome back everyone. Let's knock out LeetCode 485, max consecutive ones. Given a binary array nums, return the maximum number of consecutive ones in the array. So here's example one. We have 2 consecutive ones and then we get 3 consecutive ones, which 3 is our answer. And we have 1 consecutive one, and then over here we have 2 consecutive ones, so 2 is our answer, because again we get to 1 consecutive one, but that's just a count of 1, so we stick with 2, right? Very straightforward question. Let's look at the constraints here. We have no crazy edge cases, so if we go to the drawing board, let's walk through our solution. So essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to keep track of a res variable for Actually, we'll keep track of an output variable, I should say. No, that's fine. We'll stick with res. So res will start off at 0, and we'll keep a count variable as well. So we'll say count is also equal to 0. All right. And essentially all we're going to do here is we're going to iterate through the given input, and we're going to just check, okay? What is the value at that index? So here we have a 1, right? So we increment our count to 1 and we update our res to be the maximum between itself and the count. So res becomes a 1. We move on with our for loop and look at here, we have another 1, right? So we update our count to be equal to 2, and our res updates between the max of itself and count, so res becomes 2, and then we get here and it's a 0. So what happens when we land on a 0? When we land on a 0, we just reset our count to 0, right? And the max between our res and our count is still going to be equal to 2, right? So no logic changes there. Then we get here, and now our count becomes 1. What's the max between 2 and 1? It's still 2, right? So no changes there. Then we get here and our count becomes 2. The max stays the same. Then we get here, our count becomes 3, right? And our res now updates to the max between itself and the count, which is 3. And that's the expected output. And with that being said, let's go ahead and draw up our function signature and body as well. So we're going to go ahead and define this function. So we're going to call it, so we'll say define max ones, and it takes ends, right? And like I mentioned, very straightforward. So we'll have res equal to 0. We'll have count also equal to 0. And let's just bump everything up a little bit more. All right. So we're going to iterate through here. So you can use a regular for loop or a range for loop. I'll just use a regular for loop. So I'll say for num and nums, okay, if num is equal to a 1, and so if num is equal to a 1 here, we'll say count plus equals 1. Else, okay, the only other case if it's a 0, so we'll say count is equal to 0, and regardless, we're going to say res is equal to the max of itself, res, and our count, okay? And at the very end, as you'd expect, we're going to just return the res. All right, let's just do a walkthrough, this time with this example, okay? So I'll reset everything here. All right, so what happens here? Okay, that number is equal to 1, so count plus equals 1. There we go. And then res is equal to the max of res and count. So res becomes 1. Then we get here, right? Because we're back inside the for loop. This condition is not met, but this condition is met, right? So now count becomes 0. Res stays the same, right? Still equal to 1 because 1 is greater than 0. Okay. We get here, right? So we're here. Count becomes 1. Res is already 1, right? So we move on. We get here. Count becomes 2. Res is the max between res and count, right? So res becomes 2. We get here. We don't hit this case, but we hit this case, right? Else count is equal to else when num is equal to 0, count is equal to 0. So this becomes here. Res is greater than our count, so no change there. Then we get here and we hit this case, so count becomes 1. No changes happen because res is already greater than count, right? And we're done with the for loop, so we finish this. Now we just return the res, which is equal to 2, and that is our output. All right, let's go ahead and quickly navigate to LeetCode, and let's write our solution. Okay, so first and foremost, like I mentioned, we need a res variable equal to 0. We need a count variable equal to 0. And then a normal for loop. So for num and nums, if num is equal to a 1, we say count plus equals 1. Else, the only other case is if it's equal to 0. So then we reset count equal to 0. And we always update res along the way to be equal to the max of itself and the count, okay? At the very end, we just return res, and let's see if it passes the test cases. It does pass these initial test cases. Submit it, and we have a working solution. Let's go back to the drawing board so we can discuss the time and the space, okay? So the time complexity is equal to big O of n, where n is the size of the given nums, and the space is equal to big O of 1. It's constant, okay? Because we're not using any extra memory. We just have these variables that we're tracking in place. And with that being said, whatever platform you're on, like, comment, subscribe, follow. I'll see you in the next one.